You are now listening to
Chakras and Shotguns. Welcome to Chakras and Shotguns, the podcast that guides you on a journey of spiritual development and personal preparedness. I'm Jen, a former lawyer, now wellness entrepreneur and human design lover.
And I'm Mick, a marketer, Reiki master, and Akashic Records reader.
Okay. Most people think that you have to be born a psychic to receive information about the future. But what if there was a library where you could look up what lies ahead? Today we're talking about the Akashic Records. Stick around to the end to find out how you can work with Mick and look into yours.
But before we get into that, if you want to see us while you listen, we are now recording the podcast with video in living color. So go to our YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/chakras shotguns and subscribe.
All right, let's begin as we always do with a breathwork meditation to put us into a mindful place. Let's go ahead and get started. Find a comfortable seat. You can always lie down and start to connect with your breath. Go ahead and flicker your eyes closed. Place one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. Take a deep inhale in through your nose, expanding your belly. Hold it at the top. And then exhale that breath out of your mouth. Let's do that again. Inhale through your nose. Hold. And let that breath go out through your mouth. Let's do one more together. Inhale through your nose. Hold. Seal your lips closed and exhale this breath back out through your nose. Allow yourself to start to breathe naturally. And try to match the length of your inhales to the length of your exhales. Today, my intention for our time together is clarity. And I'd ask you to visualize a question, an issue, a challenge, something that you're working through or you want insight on. And bring that to the forefront of your mind. Almost place it in the space in between your brows. Imagine that issue is somewhat covered up, maybe by clouds or smoke. And allow yourself to slowly will any haze, any doubt, any misunderstanding, confusion. Allow that to slowly roll away. Allow yourself to feel the emotion of gratitude. For the eventual clarification, understanding, answer to whatever it is that you've brought to this meditation today. Gratitude that it was answered, and gratitude that you have the patience for that answer to come into your reality. Let's take one more deep inhale in together. In through your nose. And exhale that breath out through your mouth. Start to wiggle your fingers, your toes. As you start to come back into the room, flickering your eyes open last. And let's get on with the show.
Ooh. That was a good one, Jen. That was right on time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jen knows this, but y'all don't. I've been in need of some answers the last few days. I've talked to Melanie Esperon, who we've had on the show. I've talked to Jackie Hilbrick, who we've also had on the show. Psychics that we trust and love. And yeah, I just been in need for some answers of my own. So that breath work was right on time.
Patience.
Yes, that's what I need right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. So we're finally getting around to talking about the Akashic Records. It's one of those topics that I feel like we have for a long time been discussing. Say, we're going to get around to that. Mm-hmm. It's been on our lists.
It's been on the list before we hit record.
Yeah, it's a topic that we have a lot of interest in. It's something that I've been reading a ton about. Yeah. And I think we wanted to just like really give some room to breathe for us to like really dig into it and like have enough information that we can kind of distill down into a great episode to bring to y'all. So that's what we have today. So let's first start off with a little bit of a definition of what the Akashic Records are. I know it sounds kind of like grand, like this, big, I guess, weird concept, but yeah, it's not as crazy as the name sounds, I guess. Woo-woo. Yeah.
And I'm a former spelling bee queen, so I love a definition. So there are a few definitions that we've heard, but we're going to pull the one from Linda Howe's book, How to Read the Akashic Records. Mm-hmm. And she defines the records as a dimension of consciousness that contains a vibrational record of every soul and its journey. They are an experiential body of knowledge that contains everything that every soul has ever thought, said, and done over the course of its existence, as well as all its futures possible. That's a lot.
Sound like something out of a Marvel movie or something, right? Like What If or Quantumanium, like Multiverse of Madness, something like that, right? So I've also heard it described as an ethereal library, or this like repository of all of our like thoughts and emotions and experiences all kind of like rolled into this one like library, if you will. There's also other names for the Akashic Records. So there's the Book of Life that some people refer to it as, or even the Astral Akasha. So yeah, it shows up in a few different places.
Yeah. And the word Akasha means ether in Sanskrit. Shout out to Nas.
Yeah. That's when I first heard ether.
I recently admitted to Mick that I have never listened to ether all the way through.
Wow. Yeah.
But I know the beat and I know what it means.
Okay.
And that's all that matters.
What is ether?
Ether is considered the fifth element. So we have the four elements that we know. Earth. I always want to say earth, wind, and fire. So I had to slow myself down. Earth, air, fire, and water, right? Those are the ones that we know. And those are ones that we can touch, taste. If you eat dirt, I don't know, whatever. Then we can feel, that we can experience with the senses that we learn about in like fifth grade science class, right? And ether is thought to be like the spaces in between, the spaces unseen, this ethereal space that maybe we can't touch, taste, hear, see in the conventional way.
Now you made me want to go back and watch the Fifth Element movie with Bruce Willis and Chris Tucker and what's that one chick's name? You know what I'm talking about. Well, I like that movie.
From the zombie from Resident Evil. I was gonna guess, and it was gonna be offensive.
Just leave that alone. Leave it alone.
It has an itch at the end, though.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. What you're talking about. Over there.
Okay. But also, one other thing, it's like the vastness of space, ether is. And so it includes both physical space. I want to clarify that. It doesn't include physical space, but also unseen energy fields.
Exactly. So some of the first mentions of the Akasha and the Akashic records. So we see it show up in ancient Buddhist and Hindu texts, but there are also, some people believe, mentions of the Akashic records in the Bible. And so I wrote down a couple of scriptures that people point to specifically that I wanted to share with the congregation today.
Am I the first lady today?
I mean, you want the crown? You can wear it,
I don't know if I can get hats over my head.
So first up, we got Hebrews chapter 10, verse 7. And it says, "Behold, here I am, coming to do your will, O God, to fulfill what is written of me in the volume of the book." And the book is capitalized. So, people often think that is referring to what we called earlier, right? The book of life was one of the names of the Akashic records. And so people will make the connection with that volume that is spoken in that scripture. Then we also have in Psalms chapter 139, verse 16, it says, "You had scrutinized my every action. All were recorded in your book, my days listed and determined, even before the first of them occurred." So again, it's this record of everything that will happen even before someone is brought into the three-dimensional plane.
I wonder what regular schmegular Christians think when they see the book. Is it do they think it's a circular reference back to the Bible?
Maybe. But we know that the Bible doesn't have records of everyone's life in it, so that would be odd.
Well, that's fair. So what is the book? The reason why I'm asking this is because what I call regular schmegular Christianity don't really like to talk about other texts like that. Finding out that there were other books of the Bible felt very risque. I don't even know if I shared that with my mother yet.
Yeah.
So this other book,
what is the book?
What y'all talking about? Where'd that come from? It also makes me think of, I think it's a scripture, but sometimes Black church, we be thinking stuff scriptures and it's not in the Bible. It's just something Black people say.
Yeah.
But where God talks about knowing the number of hairs on your head. Hairs? You know what I'm trying to say. And that feels like an accounting. That feels like data entry. That feels like, you know what I mean?
There's a spreadsheet somewhere.
Right?
Yeah, I feel you.
Oh, add this in. Jen's had a couple kids, you know. When you fill out that paperwork at the dentist and how many surgeries have you had? And Lord. Do you have asthma?
They ask everything.
Did your daddy have glaucoma? To be asking all these random questions.
Sitting checking boxes forever.
That's going in the book. It's already in the book.
All right, so that's kind of an overview of religious texts, right? We talked a little bit about the Bible, but I wanted to sprinkle in, a little sprinkle. Sprinkle. Some science into this conversation. So there's a dope book I actually read. It is called Science in the Akashic Field, and it is by, I don't want to mess up his name, Irvin Laszlo. And so basically, to summarize the book, it's really detailed. It goes into a lot of scientific theory. So I'll kind of give you the too long didn't read. The first couple chapters, he's breaking down what this elusive theory of everything is. So he calls it the TOE, and scientists way back to Newton, through Einstein, they've been trying to come up with a theory that explains the macro level cosmo things that are happening. So how the planets are moving, with also applying those same principles to what's happening on a subatomic level, right? So it's this idea that there's one theory that covers it all, as above, so below, right? You know what I mean?
Okay.
To kind of tie it all in. What he found is that essentially the concept of the Akasha and this vastness of space that you talked about earlier, this field, really helps to support and kind of give forth a theory of everything, right? So the subtle sea of energy is what he calls the Akasha. He says that encompasses all of reality, everything from atoms to pure consciousness, right?
Okay.
And so then he describes in detail how modern science, so some of the new advances in physics and quantum physics, really support the existence of this field, and that is how it all ties to the theory of everything. So it's this, almost like a proof. I don't know if you remember mathematical proofs.
I remember proofs.
So it's almost laid out in that way to basically prove from a scientific standpoint that there is this field that we have come to know throughout these religious texts as the Akasha.
So I also remember that the proof is in the pudding.
Oh, okay. Didn't know where you were going with that, but all right.
I didn't either. I just really wanted to say that. In college, I only had to get 2 semesters of science for my degree. And I chose physical science. And we were doing things like measuring the width of the chalkboard and seeing what other people's measurements look like.
Wait, this was in college?
This was a college level course.
Wow. Okay.
It was easy peasy.
Okay.
Lemon squeezy, as the kids say. Because I'm not a science person. But I want to know more about quantum physics. I hated physics, but I had a terrible physics teacher.
I want to challenge that. I think that there are a lot of things that condition, particularly women and women of color, that they are not science people when they are going through like elementary, middle school, even high school, right?
Okay, let me back up. I am not a physics person.
Okay.
However, my physics teacher was a coach and a terrible human being. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that clouded.
So energetically, how you feel about the subject is closely tied to his energy. And so I
have a soul tie.
Okay.
To physics. Not in a sexual way.
We going all off course right now.
But I did love chemistry. Chemistry was great. We got chemistry, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, so that's a little bit about what the Akashic Records are. Let's get back on track, Jen.
Thank you, baby.
We should probably talk about what or who is in the records. So the records are said to be governed by the lords of the records. It's a group of beings.
It kind of reminds me like the TVA in Loki. If y'all haven't seen Loki, y'all probably have no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't know how many people seen Loki.
I know Marvel been going down. But anyway, essentially, there are these beings that you communicate with when you go into the records, and they are kind of like the translators. They're helping you understand the light language, because it's not like it's written in English. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You gotta be able to communicate with humans all across the world. So they're the lords of the records, and they're kind of acting as like the interface, if you will, to help you access the records, and they kind of control what information can kind of come in and out of the records. I've actually been in readings where they're like, nah, you can't know that right now. Like, the record, they ain't gonna tell you that. So
how did that make your nosy self feel?
I mean, what was I gonna do? I'm gonna argue? Who can I appeal to?
No, but like, you're nosy, so it's like yeah. Were you like? Did you feel like that?
A little bit. It made me curious.
Yeah, you curious.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Okay, so we've talked about the Akashic Records. It's this ethereal library, the theory of everything. Jen didn't like physics. Lords of the Records, not to be confused with Lords of the Rings or Lord of the Dance. Anywho, what is the point? Why do we want to know about the records? Like,
please tell us.
So there are a few things that you can learn about in the records, and here's a little list. And going back real quick to the definition, she talks about every soul's story, and I think sometimes people get caught up in like, oh, this is going to tell me what Jen in this lifetime married to Mick, what is going on. But we believe in past lives and reincarnation. So it tells the story of Jen when she was so-and-so back in the day. Or Jen, whoever she's going to be. I don't know if this is my last life.
That's always an interesting concept. Like, even the phrase past lives is kind of weird to me, because if we believe that time is a construction and it is not happening in a linear fashion, then those lives are actually happening all at the same time. But I don't want to, go down that road. We already covered that in another.
Who's off track?
We covered that in another episode. I'm just alluding back to it.
Go listen to the time episode. We'll put it in the show notes. Anyways, here's back to my list. If we can get back on track, thank you. Past lives. You can gain insight into your past lives. Like, what lessons were you supposed to learn? Where was there karma that you might have carried into your current life? Understanding like recurring patterns. Like, you keep doing this same shit because what's not clicking. You're not learning the lesson. So you can also find closure on past experiences.
I'm just thinking about our youngest daughter who don't want to go to bed. Like, what's not clicking? Why you not learning to go to bed? That's also my parental angst right now.
Yeah. We are recording this at nighttime. I could not record until she went to sleep. Back to my list.
Okay, keep going with the list. My bad. Yes, my bad.
soul purpose. Why are you here? What are you supposed to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are your unique gifts? How can you better tap into those? How can you strengthen your gifts? Where are you supposed to use those gifts, et cetera, et cetera? Understanding your soul's journey and all of that jazz. Relationships, gaining insights as to why do you keep picking water signs? I don't, but you might. And that is a brave task. Anyways, uncovering hidden dynamics and improving your communication into understanding, right? Like, you know, maybe you're playing the victim role. Maybe you're part of the problem. Maybe you didn't learn boundaries in another life, like in your past life, and you're bringing that into this one. And so this is what you're supposed to learn from that. Also, health and wellness. Like, are you supposed to be eating that pork hot dog? Probably not. But identifying the root cause of like physical and mental and spiritual like well-being, if there are issues there, right? Maybe you need to take on a different diet, cut certain things out, add certain things in, etc. Like that can be found in the records. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about is guidance and support. So they're the lords of the records. You might also hear the term or see the acronym MTLOs, which is Master Teachers Loved Ones. Masters, I already said that.
Master teachers,
loved ones, ancestors, etc., are also believed to be in this ethereal space in the ether and can provide you guidance and just be like, girl, we love you down.
Yeah. So master teachers would be like Jesus, Buddha, you know, people who have like really achieved a level of enlightenment while on this planet that is an example for all of us, right, to learn from. So that's what a master teacher would be. All right, so back to Jen's list. The list was amazing. It sounded like all of the things that you would ever want to know about your life are on this list, right? It sounds a little bit like it might be too good to be true. Like it's like an infomercial back in the day after Saturday morning cartoons when they was trying to sell you something or sell your mama on something. But Jen and I can attest. Oh, my bad. Did I go too far with that?
No, I was like, where are we going? Go ahead.
It was too good to be true. I was just trying to get you, you know, you saw them commercials.
I'm here.
Lose weight now. Like you can lose 50 pounds tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
You feel me? Okay. Anyway, so my point is Jen and I can actually attest that the list that she laid out is in fact what you can learn in the records. So we wanted to spend a little time talking to you guys about the many Akashic Records readings that we've had with different readers and just tell you, you know, firsthand how those are. So I'll let Jen go ahead and kick it off with.
I get to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
So the first one I had was probably 2021.
I think so.
Yes.
That sounds right.
Right after I had our second child. And we were still kind of new to this.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a great Akashic Records reader. Her name is Lindsay Mann. We'll put her info in the show notes as well. She was getting, the things she was getting from the records, I don't know if I was ready to hear. To prepare for this episode, I went back and looked at my notes because I keep notes for all of my readings. I also record all of my readings. And there were things in there that I wasn't ready to hear in 2021 that even like 2.5 years later, I'm like, oh, okay. So it was so great, but I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I think that was the biggest lesson for me from an Akashic Records reading, as well as readings in general, that maybe you don't know what to do with it now. Write it down. Save it, keep it, you know, in your head, and then maybe it'll make a little bit more sense later. But she talked about showing up, being seen, which I think is kind of ironic because when we started the podcast, like we were both working full-time jobs and it was very like hush hush.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
You're not gonna know my last name.
Yeah.
Like I'm not telling anybody about this.
We didn't even like say you were a lawyer, I think, at first.
No.
Yeah.
And now like we're on YouTube and now there's a video. So she was really talking about like, she kept saying like Showtime. And I was like, girl, what are you talking about? I'm very private. I don't want anybody to see me. And now look, here I am.
Right. If you want to see Jen again, check us out on YouTube. All right. So my experience, I also had a reading with Lindsay Mann. And I think the best way I can describe it, it was kind of like an abstract painting. Like it wasn't straightforward and like this is going to happen at this time. It was very like symbols. She talked about like birds of prey, right? But I didn't know that like birds of prey would end up becoming like a very special totem animal for me later, right? Like at that time, I was like, what is she talking about? Like birds of prey. But then later I had all these experiences where like hawks were showing up and I was receiving feathers, and like, you know, I have this staff that I use in my shamanism work, and I received some feathers from a bird of prey, and I have them adorned on my staff. And she actually mentioned the staff too, but she didn't specifically say staff. It was like this gift that you're going to receive from nature, and it's going to be delivered. And like it was like kind of almost abstract to where I didn't know what she was referring to until I went back and listened to it, like Jen was saying, in preparation for this episode. I was like, oh, that's what she was talking about. She also told me about shamanism in my bloodline, right? And at that point, I had not been trained in shamanism. I had not gone through the rites and everything. But she talked about how I could connect with them using drums. And I had never really played the drums, but now I have like 4 drums and I'm playing them all the time. And it's just weird how she like kind of foreshadowed what things would be like 2 years later almost, you know, from that reading. So really, really cool.
I want to say a couple of things.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't remember. But did you go into that reading with a bunch of questions?
I don't think I did.
Me either.
I didn't know what it was. I was like...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, for my highest good, and let's just rock with it, you know, and we'll roll.
Yeah.
Which I also feel like sometimes when you're trying out a new reader, you'd be like, what you know about me? What you know about that? So like, you'll be like, whatever, just tell me what, you know, what do you see? And so I think it was kind of this very amorphous kind of thing, but also it's easy for me to watch your experience, like as a outside perspective. And I think like, if it went, you know, like, this is what's going to happen, da 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 da, I don't know if you would be like, what? But like, you had to experience the almost childlike wonder of discovering those things. Yeah. For me, if she had da 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 da, I might have been like, okay, hang it up. I'm a lawyer. I'm going back to work. And like, I don't want to do that. And so maybe it had to be a little amorphous so I didn't scurry away, because I will do that. Yeah. Now, on the flip side, we've also had... You know, now we're not new to this, but true to this, we've had readings with a woman named Alicia Rogers. Yes. And we go in with questions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've had several readings with her.
So we're like, we know exactly what we're getting into. These are the questions, girl. This is what I need answers to.
What are some things she's told you?
Past lives are fun. Yeah. They also can give you perspective and reframe. So there was a person in my life who I was kind of having some angst with, and they let me know, oh, you were their mother in a past life. And I was like, damn, what kind of mother was I? Because this person is eating me up. So, yeah, it gave me a little perspective on that.
I've had some interesting past life conversations with her as well. I've talked about some of my Egyptian past lives. There's also a past life where I hunted with a hawk. So I was like in Mongolia, and I had like a hawk that they still have this practice today, right? Where there's folks who still have the practice that they, you know, learn from their ancestors, and they still hunt with hawks. But apparently in this past life, I had a hawk and was training it and had it out there capturing food for me. You know, so I had this like very personal relationship with the hawk. And so it's interesting that in this life that still remains to be a totem animal. I also want to point out that when we were moving to LA, Alicia gave us really great insight on neighborhoods, right? So we had like a list of neighborhoods we were kind of considering, and we laid a few out, and she was like, yes to that one, no to that one, and definitely not that one, you know? So there were some interesting kind of things that play there. Was like, baby,
it's dark over there. And I was like, oh shit. One of them I'm still mourning a little bit because I love it. I want it to be over there.
I want it to be over there.
But it's fine. We are where we were supposed to be.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about Alicia, which kind of goes into what we talked about at the top of the show. Alicia told me that I have the ability to go into the records pretty much whenever I want to, which I did not know I had this gift. There was actually one of my first kind of metaphysical dreams that I had. I stumbled into this library of sorts, and come to find out later it was the Akashic Records, but I didn't know what it was. And so we had a whole conversation about that, and she was like, yeah, you're able to go in and access different records whenever you want. And so it's something that I've been working on, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of that.
I wonder if your ability to go into the records is somehow tied to how nosy you are. You already knew?
I felt it coming.
You knew where I was going?
I went to the records and they told me that you was going to say that. Why don't we talk a little bit about how to approach a reading?
Yes. I'll get off you for a second.
Thank you.
So again, of course, if you have questions, like specific questions, where should I move? Should I stay in this job? I'm thinking about doing this type of business. What advice, can you give me around my gifts?
Mm-hmm.
How can I strengthen my gifts? What are some things I should avoid? You really want to, speaking of avoiding, you want to avoid asking yes or no questions.
Yeah.
You want to ask really open-ended questions,
Yeah.
right? Like, I am looking for a new boo. What are some things that I should avoid? Where should I avoid going? Where should I go?
Yeah. To attract that love in. Yeah.
Yeah, to attract that love in. What work should I be doing on myself? Right? Yeah. I've asked about investments.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked about
Jobs,
relationships. Again, that person was eating me up and it was rough. And I was like, what is going on? It was not Mick.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
I want to go over a little bit of like the nuts and bolts though real quick of like what happens in a reading.
Okay.
So I can jump into that. So most commonly you will have a reader who will open the records with some sort of procedure. And most commonly that is a prayer. And so in the book that we mentioned, it's Linda Howe, right? That's her name? Mm-hmm. So in her book, How to Read the Akashic Records, she has what's called the pathway prayer process. And so she kind of lays out exactly how she opens up the records. And every reader will be a little bit differently. They may have the exact prayer that Linda has, or they may have their own prayer. It's a little remixed. And so you'll hear something. It could, again, not be a prayer. It could be some other type of opening. But essentially, there will be a moment where they will open up the records, and then you will state your full name, which I know Jen at one point had a little angst about that.
Maybe. You don't have a home? I have 4 names. Okay, I have 4 homes. No, I'm just playing.
Go ahead.
I moved my maiden name to be my second middle name.
Mm-hmm,
and so she was like, state your first and last name. I was like, baby, I got more names. And my maiden name was very regular schmegler. There was another one at my high school. I have lots of names, and I want to be clear.
Didn't want the lords to get confused with somebody else, right?
It's me, oh Lord. Sorry. You heard the song?
Yes. Standing here, right? So once the records are open, though, that's when you can start to ask your questions. So as Jim mentioned, you don't want to ask yes or no questions. So yeah, you'll go in, you'll ask your questions, you'll receive the answers from the lords of the records. And then once all of that's taken care of, all the information's out, you're starting to wrap up your session, there will be a closing, and it's typically a prayer as well. They'll thank the masters, the lords of the records, the master teachers, and the loved ones that showed up, and you will close out the records, and that'll be the end of your session.
Yeah. One thing I want to say, this applies to Akashic Records readings. It also applies to all readings. Mm-hmm. Is you get in this reading, and sometimes the person that's reading the records, or if it's a medium or a psychic or whatever, they can almost seem like they're in a trance-like state. Yeah. And maybe it's just me, and I'm a polite Southern belle, I guess. But sometimes I'm like, okay, I will take that answer.
Yeah.
But ask follow-up questions. Yeah. Own your reading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're here for a reason. You probably paid a pretty penny
yeah.
to be there.
Yeah.
So just be like, what you mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, you don't have to get attitude. Don't be rude about it.
Yeah.
But
some of these readings on the records are not cheap. You're talking several $100s in some cases, depending on the reader, right? So, yeah, own it. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid. Speak up.
Yeah.
Get what you need out of it.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to me as a reader. So as I mentioned before, I have the ability, according to Alicia, to go in and out of the records. I've been practicing with going in, and so I want to extend a special offer to the listeners. I'll be taking 3 folks at a reduced introductory rate. It only
very reduced.
So got to jump on it while you can. I'm trying to build up my practice a little bit. So for 3 folks who DM us on Instagram, I will offer a 30-minute session. So it won't be a full hour. It'll be 30 minutes for just $20. So jump on it, take advantage of that, because it won't be here for long.
All right. That's the show. Our first videotape show.
Yeah. You did good. You look good.
Oh, thank you. Definitely jump on those readings with Mick.
Yeah.
Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. What do the people do? Hit the button below. If you're listening the way you normally listen, just go ahead and roll on over to YouTube and just go ahead and subscribe, baby.
Yeah,
You never know.
You might want to check us out one day.
You never know.
As we always say, if you're loving the show, please leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform. Thank you so much.
Namaste.